Yesterday, I given listeners, solid listeners. How many listeners I give? 4. What is first one? Solid context listener. Next, solid context attribute listener. Next, HTTP session listener. Next, HTTP session attribute listener. Okay, 4 listeners I given. Solid context listener, solid context attribute listener, solid HTTP session listener, HTTP session attribute listener. Okay. Yesterday, solid context listener are given. In this interface, how many methods are there? 2 methods. What is the first one? Context initialized. Next, context destroyed. Two methods. Okay. Say solid context listener, which contains 2 methods: context initialized, context destroyed. It takes solid context event. Okay. It takes solid context event. These context initialized and context destroyed methods. Here, what is the access modifier? Is it public? Public. And is it abstract method or concrete method? Concrete method. If you want to write in a interface, which keyword we have to write? Default. So concrete method, if you want to write in interface, default keyword required. Void. Same here, public, default, void. Okay. These 2 methods are there. Say, these are interface methods, nothing but event handlers to handle this event. When this event is generated, whenever solid context is created and destroyed. So creation time, this method called. Destroying time, this method called. Okay. That is yesterday given the process. Web container, what it will do while creating solid context. Web container, what it will do while creating, destroying. Now, task I'll explain. See our task. Suppose here I'll write context initialized. Context initialized method. I'll write here solid context event, something SCE. Here I'll write here some code I'll write, connection establishment code. Here context initialized close, context destroyed. Here what I'll do, connection establishment code I'll write. Connection establishment code. Okay. Here connection close code I'll write. Connection close. Like this I'll write. This is, it's like my program, one program. This class name, suppose mylistener.java. I'll write mylistener.java. I'll write. Here connection establishment code I'll write. Here connection close code I'll write. When this method is executed, whenever web application is deployed. When this method executed, whenever web application is undeployed. Okay, that is automatically done. Here, whenever web application deployed, one Servlet context created. One Servlet context object created. Whenever Servlet context is created, then Servlet context event generated. That event passed to this method. This method body executed. Then connection established. Whenever web application undeployed, this context destroyed. Then again event generated. That event passed to this method body executed. Connection closed. So this is a process done by web container while deploying application, while undeploying application. After establishing a connection here, what I'll do is the connection object I'll place here in the context. Context is common to all Servlets or specific to Servlet? Common to all Servlet. So here what I'll do with the Servlet context, one method I'll call here. Servlet context dot set attribute. One method I'll call. Here attribute name, suppose Oracle. Connection interface reference. This connection I'll place here. So the connection placed here. Name of the connection Oracle. That is any name you can write whatever you want. This is connection reference. Name value pair. Set attribute. Name value pair. Servlet context dot set attribute. Then this connection object placed here. This object you can access in all Servlets in a WAR file. One more Servlet program I'll write. Okay. Here, suppose my Servlet.java I'll write. This Servlet will write this connection object. So get attribute method I'll call. Here what I'll do is Servlet context dot get attribute. Get attribute. I'll pass attribute name Oracle. Then you'll get a connection. You'll get a connection. This connection, after getting connection, whatever you want, you can write the code after getting connection. Okay. Say my listener, my Servlet. It is listener program. It is Servlet program. Now here what will be happen? Just you observe. Here what will happen? You observe. This is not Servlet. This is Servlet. This is listener. Servlet program, listener program, both will create in a one folder, one WAR file. Will deploy in server. Whenever I deployed, this context created. Whenever context created, then context event generated. That event passed to this method. Then this method body executed. Connection establishment code executed. Connection established. That object placed in context. Up to here executed. What I'll do, I'll send the request to this program. What this program will do, it will retrieve the connection object. Connection object comes here. After getting, now that is ready to use. Now you can call create statement or prepare statement or callable statement, whatever you want, you can call. Okay. Prepare statement, callables, prepare call, methods you can call, you can get the statements. Whatever you want, you can use. So this object is ready to use. Okay. After that, whenever you undeploy, this context destroyed. Whenever it is destroyed, again event generated. That is passed to this method. Your connection closed. Then it is vanished. Connection vanished. This is vanished. Everything is vanished. Like this. So whenever you click on deploy button, connection established. Whenever you click on undeploy button, connection closed. These all automatically done. Now, ready, son? This is our task. So two programs we have tried. My Solid, My Listener. Is it over? So this method is executed whenever web application is deployed. This method is executed whenever web application is undeployed. these two methods automatically executed. For this program, we are going to send the request, but this program automatically executed. That is only listener. It is going to listen events whenever occurred, handled. That's what it is called, event handler. Okay. Is it over? See how to do this one. See. Now, this one listener, if you learn, remaining listeners, same style, no change. Writing program is same style, just methods different. See, file, new, dynamic web project. Suppose solid context listener, something SCL written. Click on next, click on next, generate XML, click on finish. Right click, new. Now you have to select listener. See, solid, listener, filter. Three options are there. Listener you have to select. Now package. Suppose solid context listener, same package I'll continue. Class name, my listener. Okay, my listener. My listener, superclass. We don't require superclass. Next. Say, click on next button. Here, listeners available. See, solid context listener, solid context attribute listener. We have listeners. HTTP session listener, HTTP session attribute listener, HTTP session activation listener, HTTP session binding listener. See, solid request listener, solid request attribute listener. Total 8 listeners are there. Which listener you want? Solid context listener. Select. Click on next. And here, that interface, solid context listener interface added. Finish. Now, you observe it is showing Java X, that is Jakarta X. Because Tomcat 9 version, up to 9 version, Java X. 10 onwards, Jakarta. Okay, Jakarta.solid context event, Jakarta.solid context listener. See, are you getting any methods here? See, public class my listener implement solid context listener. It is constructor, but methods are not showing. Reason, both are concrete methods. It is not compulsory to override. If required one method, one only override. If required two method, two only override. Mandatory methods, it will show. There is no method mandatory. That's what it is not showing anything. But if you don't write anything, no error, no output, no exception. Okay. That's what you have to write something. Public access modifier. What is there? Public. Context initializer method, context destroy method. What is access modifier? Public. Overriding rules is studied. No? In superclass, public is there. Subclass, what we have to write? Public only we can write. In superclass, protected is there. Public valid, protected valid. Superclass default is there. Public, protected, default. Private is there. Private methods cannot be overridden because private members cannot be inherited. because private scope is within the class. Okay. So default means without writing access modifier, the default. Okay. Now public is there. Public void context initialized, which takes solid context event. Okay. This is one method. This is one method. Now, one more method, public void context destroyed. Solid context event. Okay. Context initialized method, context destroyed method. Context initialized, context destroyed. Here we have tried establishing a connection. Now what we have tried? Class dot for name. Like driver class, Oracle dot JDBC dot driver dot Oracle driver. Okay. Next connection. Connection con equal to driver manager dot get connection. Get connection. Here 3 parameters. Next, what you have tried? JDBC colon Oracle colon then colon at localhost colon 1521 colon XC. Username system. Password manage. Connection established. Okay. Now this connection reference we have to place in solid context. First of all, we require solid context. In previous programs, we called get solid context method, but that method is in solid config, solid request. In generic solid, we have same method. See. Now you observe here, we require get solid context. For getting solid context, Java P Jakarta dot solid config. You see, in this interface, one method is there. See, solid config. See, what is the method name? See, get solid context. If you call, you will get a solid context. But this method in which interface? Solid config. Is there any config here? No. So that method you cannot access. Not possible. Suppose Java P Java Jakarta dot solid request. In solid request, it is not there. Generic solid will be there. In generic solid is Java P Jakarta dot solid dot generic solid. Here one method is there, get solid context. See, get solid context. You'll get a solid context. But this method in which class? Generic solid. Is there any generic solid here? No. Is there an HDB solid? No. We cannot retrieve those methods. We cannot call those methods. Here we have my listener. It's our class. Here implement solid context listener. That is the interface. My listener superclass is object. In object class, solid context will not be there because that is common to all classes. That is okay. Now But we are using one more class here, Servlet context event. In this class, method is there. See, Java P Jakarta dot Servlet context event. Here, see, get Servlet context. We'll get a context. With this, we can retry. So I'll write here Servlet context SC equal to SEE. Servlet context event dot get Servlet context. We got a context. With this set attribute method, can I call? Yes. Servlet context dot set attribute. Name of the attribute, value of the attribute. Name of the attribute, whatever you want, you can write. I am writing suppose Oracle. You can write whatever you want. Here I am writing connection. You observe. First parameter string type. Second parameter object type. Here string type. String type I passed it. Okay. Here what I passed? Connection reference. Actually, which type it takes? Object. Object is class. It will take object class, but I passed connection reference. Is it valid or not valid? No, actually what it takes? Object class. What I'm passing? Connection reference. Give me answer. Valid or not valid? If it is valid, how it is valid? If it is not valid, why it is not valid? If it is valid, how it is valid? If it is not valid, why it is not valid? Now, actually what it takes? Object class. What I passed? Connection reference. Give me answer. Object class is a super class for all classes. Is it class? Is it class? No, what is this? Interface. Connection is interface. But what will be happen here? I'll explain. Connection is interface. Object is class. Actually, there is no relation. Okay, every class derived from object class you learn. No, connection is a interface. But connection interface implemented in some class, no? Connection interface implemented in some class. In a JDBC driver software, already given, all JDBC interfaces are implemented in JDBC driver software by driver vendors. All Servlet interfaces are implemented in web container software by web container vendor. So connection interface implemented in one class. That class is a part of driver software, but that class super class is object class. You take any class, object class, like that valid, like that upcasting. So connection is interface. It is implemented in one class. That class is a subclass of object class. That's what valid. Okay. It is valid. Connection interface. Control Shift O. But this is exception handling. What you have tried? Try catch blocks. Alt Shift Z. Try catch or multi catch, whatever you want, you can use. Now, this connection reference, can I call it as variable? Is it instance variable or a class variable or local variable? Local variable. Can we access this connection here? No. But I want to close here. What do I do? This connection reference, we have to declare outside the method. Suppose I'll write here connection con here con equal to, okay, Now, can I use here? Yes, connection close. Okay, it will throw exception. Okay, it's over. This is listener program. This listener, I'm not going to execute. It is automatically executed. Okay. This is one listener class. Now you observe, right click, new, solid. Package name, solid context listener. Class name, my listener. Okay. Sorry, my class, my solid, I'll write. My solid. My solid. Extends HTTP solid. Next. Here, whatever you want, you can write. Suppose I'm writing test. But whatever you're writing, you have to remember, you have to write in address bar. Now, test. Which type of request comes by default? Get. So, do get. Here, generic solid extends HTTP solid. HTTP solid extends generic solid. My solid extends HTTP solid. HTTP solid extends generic solid. That method, can I call with my solid? Can I call? Yes. In that class, get solid context method is there, no? That is I want to call. What you have to write? Solid context SC equal to. Now, my solid object dot I want to call generic solid method. My solid superclass is HTTP solid. HTTP solid superclass is generic solid. That method I want to call with my solid. What we have tried? Get solid context. But for calling this method, generic solid object required. But generic solid inverted in HTTP solid. HTTP solid inverted in my solid. With my solid reference, can I call? What we have tried? My solid object who will create? Web container creates. That object referred by? That object I'm not creating. Created by web container. Now that object how to write? Give me answer. First, this line is valid or not valid? Not valid. Why it is not valid? Their error appears. Red color appears. With that reason you are giving. Now give me answer. This line valid or not valid? Now this line, 29th line, valid or not valid? Ninth line, valid or not valid? If it is valid, how it is valid? If it is not valid, why it is not valid? Not valid? Valid. How? For calling, actually this method in which class? Get solid context method in which class? Generic solid. Generic solid inverted in which class? HTTP solid. HTTP solid inverted in which class? My solid. Using my solid object, can I call or not? Yes. My solid object who will create? Web container creates. That object reference dot get solid context. Can we call or not? That object reference how to access? This class object, how to access? What is it? Current class object. this keyword. Current class object, this keyword. See, first I given this class object, then also it didn't identify. Current class object means you identified. Current class object, nothing but this keyword. This keyword, is it required to write? No, implicitly comes. That's what valid. Actually, that is not that error. That is, we have to import the package. That error. See, this is not imported. That is the reason error. See, valid. So here implicitly what will be there? This keyword. So here this dot, this keyword, no need to write. Implicitly this keyword comes. If you write also, nothing will happen. Okay. GetSolid context is a method of which class? Generic solid. This keyword refers which class object? Current class object. Current class nothing but which class? MySolid. MySolid superclass? HDB solid. HDB solid superclass? Generic solid class method we are calling with MySolid object. So it is valid. Is it core Java or advanced Java? Core Java. Okay. Each and every line core Java only. Core Java, if you are familiar, these are nothing you observe. Okay. That's what. Already you completed core Java, but don't stop to practice. Continue until you reach your target. So core Java completed. If you forget core Java, again advanced Java complete. Advanced Java you forget, no use. Until you get a job, you have to remember. Okay. Not until completion of course. Until you reach your target. Say while doing BTech, what you will do? Up to exam. Up to exam you will remember. Next day only, after exam only you'll forget. Okay. Same question paper, next day if they conduct, many people will fail. That is happening. But now you set your mind until you reach your target. You have to remember. So this keyword implicitly comes. That's what valid. Okay. Here this dot gets solid context. This refers MySolid. With MySolid, HDB solid superclass, generic solid, we can access. Now, with this solid context reference, get attribute method you can call no. SC dot get attribute. Attribute name what I given? Oracle. What it returns? Object. Get attribute method returns object. But I am writing connection. Is it valid or not valid? Give me answer. Is it valid? Now this line is valid or not valid? Now get attribute method returns object class object. Object class object I assign to connection. Valid or not valid? Which is superclass? Object. Connection subclass, also subclass of object. That means object returning assigned to connection subclass. That means up or down? Downcasting. Downcasting must be done by programmer explicitly. It's an error. So here, this is connection not resolved. Suppose I'll import Control Shift O, but still error. See, still error is the reason explicit type conversion required. See, cannot convert object to connection. The tooltip text, observe yellow color. Type mismatch cannot convert object to connection. Explicitly, we have to convert. What you have to write? Connection. Now it is valid. Now it is valid. Okay. So that is downcasting. Now, just I want to display message connection object obtained. Print writer. Response dot get writer. PW dot println. Connection object obtained successfully. Because we are not creating here, already created. That is we are getting. Therefore, just connection object obtained successfully. Okay. Now for this, I want to add some HTML code. Okay. Control Shift O. Now you observe this MySolid program communicates with context to get the connection. That's it. Connection establishment code is not here. Where is connection establishment code? My listener. Now say save all. Say right click, run as, run on server, localhost, Tomcat 10. Next. These all I'll remove, unnecessarily deploying. Now, Solid context listener. This is like a WAR file. If I click on finish button, here, deployed. If I click on finish button, deployed, then what will be happen? Solid context created. Then Solid context event generated. That event passed to context initialized method in MyListener class. Their connection establishment code executed. That connection object placed in context. Okay. Say when I click on finish button, Solid context created, Solid context event generated. That order I given the series of actions done by web container. Yesterday given, open that. The series of actions done by web container whenever web application is deployed. I given yesterday. What is first step? Solid context is created. Next, Solid context event is generated. Next, event of passed to context initial method. Next, connect context initial method body executed. So if I click on this one, connection established. Okay, that code, that object placed in context. See, if I click on finish, it is done. I clicked on finish, that means deployed. Context created, context event generated, that connection established, that object placed in context. Now I am sending request to MySolid. When I send request to MySolid, what will happen? MySolid will retrieve connection object from context. See, connection object obtained successfully. So MySolid communicated with context to get the object. After getting object, now what you can do? You can continue with that connection reference. Create statement method you can call. Prepare statement method you can call. Prepare call method you can call. Whatever you want, you can perform operations. So this is when I undeploy, again context destroyed. Next, context event generated. Pass it to event handler. Okay. Connection established. Connection closed. That is the series of actions done. That is also given 4 steps. Okay. That will be happen. Like what you have to do. This listener program, I am not executing. Automatically executed. Okay. Write this program. MyListener.java. Note MyListener.java. mylistener.java. Note. SCE Solid Context Event Reference. Like exception E will write no exception E. Like that, solid context event SCE. This object reference will receive the object. Who will create that object? Web container. Event generated, no, that event received here. That is, this is same name you can write. That is local variable there. This is local variable here. Exception E will write. Whenever exception occurred, that E will receive object, no? That type only. Here also that event object received here. With this, we can call get solid context. We'll get a context. Is it over? So whenever web application is deployed, automatically context initialized method called. Whenever web application is undeployed, automatically context destroyed method called. But how it knows context initialized method available in a MyListener class? That is XML. Otherwise, annotation. Annotations, 3 annotations are given. At web solid, at web listener, at web filter. 3 annotations are there. Okay. At web solid, at web listener, at web filter. For web listener you can write listener, web listener, solid, web solid, filter, web solid, filter. Like that you can write. Either annotation or XML, any one required. Is it over? Now, one more is there. My solid. My solid. Node my solid.java. My solid.java. So just the solid communicates with context to get the connection. That's it. So here solid context, you'll get a solid context. With that, we'll get a connection. Connection object obtained successfully. So I'm sending request to my solid only. My listener automatically executed. My listener automatically executed. If my listener is not executed, this output will not come. Because connection is established there, not here. That's what I given message, connection object obtained successfully. Connection established there in a listener class. Okay, that object will come here. Got it? Now, whenever you deploy, connection established. Whenever you undeploy, connection closed. But previous programs, whenever first request came, then established. But now, before first request only connection ready. Okay, before first request only connection ready. That type. And also code reusability. Suppose in this war file 10 solids are there. 10 solids you have to write like this only. No need to write connection code in 10 solids. Okay, listener only we are writing, we are axing. Okay, this is a concept of solid context listener. This is only usage. Where we use mean this is only usage. Okay. What are the previous programs you have seen? Login solid, register solid. Both the places connection code we written. Both the places. That too, whenever first request comes, then use it. But here, when you deploy, then only connection established. And also two solids can use the same code, the same object. That's the benefit. Is it over? No. There are 4 listeners. First listener completed. Next, solid context attribute listener. Node. Second one, solid context attribute listener. It contains the following event handlers to handle solid context attribute event. It contains the following event handlers to handle solid context event. One minute. Right is up. It contains the following event handlers to handle solid context attribute event. Solid context attribute listener. It contains the following event handlers to handle solid context attribute event. So previous listener generates previous listener contains handlers to handle context event. It is context attribute event. It is another event. When this event generated, I'll give. Is it over? See, solid context attribute event is generated by web container whenever attribute is added to solid context, comma, attribute is removed from solid context, and attribute is replaced in a solid context. Solid context attribute event is generated by web container whenever attribute is added to solid context, attribute is removed from solid context, and attribute is replaced in a solid context. Over. Say that's what method names are: attribute added, attribute removed, attribute replaced. Say, for example, it is solid context. Solid context nothing but memory. Some memory object created, some memory allocated. It is solid context. When this solid context created, whenever web application is deployed, this memory, is it common to all solids or specific to solid? So whatever you place in this object, this data can be accessed by all solids in that WAR file. Okay. In this object, whatever you place, that data can be accessed by all solids in that WAR file, in that web application. Okay. It is created whenever application deployed. Then one event generated, solid context event. That is previous program you studied. That is. But in that program only, one attribute added here. That is Oracle connection. I said no. I written no. Here. Oracle. Oracle connection object added. Actually, what will happen whenever this attribute added to the solid context attribute event generated. So while adding also one event generated. While adding whatever you required, that code we have to write in attribute added method. Okay. One more connection also will create. That is you will add. Suppose MySQL connection. Something here I'll write MySQL. It is one more object, another object reference, something connection to. Then also event generated. Attribute added. Solid context attribute event generated. Then just now I given three methods. First method, attribute added method called. While adding attribute, whatever you required, that code you have to write in the attribute added method. Okay. Suppose I'll remove this one. Then also event generated. Then attribute removed method called. Whatever you want while removing, that is, you can write in the attribute removed method. This connection place, you are writing some other name. Connection 3. Then attribute replaced method called, because that is modified. Whenever it is modified, again solid context attribute event generated. Then that is passed to attribute replaced method. Replaced method called. So while adding attribute also event generated. While removing attribute also event generated. While modifying attribute also event generated. Those events, if you want to handle, this interface required. This interface contains three methods. These three you can apply. Okay. Next, third one, HTTP session listener. It contains the following event handlers to handle HTTP session event. It contains the following event handlers to handle HTTP session event. It contains the following event handlers to handle HTTP session event. One minute. Write this one. Here, HTTP session event is generated by web container whenever session is created and destroyed. HTTP session event is generated by web container whenever session is created and destroyed. HTTP session event is generated by web container whenever session is created and destroyed. Over. Say session created, session destroyed. Okay. Session tracking methods you studied, no? How many session tracking method? 4. What are those? Cookies, you are writing HTTP session, hidden format. HTTP session related. Okay. HTTP session event. While creating session, this method called. While destroying session, this method called. When session created, get session method if it is called. Session created, then this is called. When session destroyed, invalidate one method I given to vanish the session ID. At the time, this method called. So there you are calling get session method. Then this method automatically executed. There, if you call invalidate method, then this is executed. That means login, logout. Login time, this is. Logout time, this is. Okay, like that. I'll show you. Program I'll show you. Next. HTTP session attribute listener. It contains the following event handlers to handle HTTP session binding event. It contains the following event handlers. HTTP session attribute listener. Write this one. Here just HTTP session binding event given, attribute event not given, name. It contains the following event handlers to handle HTTP session binding event. Whenever you add attribute to session, set attribute, get attribute, remove attribute methods are there no at the time. HTTP session binding event is generated by web container whenever attribute is added to session, comma, attribute is removed from session, and attribute is replaced in a session. HTTP session binding event is generated by web container whenever attribute is added to session, attribute is removed from session, and attribute is replaced in a session. That is context attribute. This is session attribute. In HTTP session interface, set attribute, remove attribute methods are there. Whenever you call set attribute, this method called. Whenever you call remove attribute, this method called. Set attribute second time if you call, replaced. Set attribute second time if you call, replaced, modified. Then this is called. This program we'll see on Monday. Okay, Monday we'll see continuation.